Thank you all for helping me hit 100 subscribers. It really means a lot. And I did not think the channel would grow this fast. Please feel free to comment on what stories you would like to see next. Now on to the spookies. I've never visited this board, so excuse any errors I make regarding board culture. Here is a story that is currently happening to me. I'll give a little background and then go green text. My buddy David has 800 acres near Galena, Alaska. We're up here building onto his house and fishing the nearby rivers on our off days. We're about 15 miles back on a gravel road that goes further onto BLM. There are a few logging trucks a day on the main road, but basically no traffic after the sun sets. The first day we got here together in my Tacoma 4x4. We unscrewed the plywood off the windows, brought our bags onto the porch, got his generator started up and unlocked his various outbuildings. The air was stale and a little rank, like a dead cat. Opened side door to kitchen. Opened the back door of the cabin and the windows that you could open. Didn't go upstairs, just let the place air out. Sat down on the porch to rest and quench our thirst. It's only been in the low 60s but the plywood was heavy. We sat there and planned our remodel. Generally shot the shit. Happy to be here. He fiddled with his bait and tackle and I admired the view from the front porch. Now I'm not really a ghost or spirit believer, but I saw something last weekend. It's real quiet and there was a lull in our conversation. Then out of the corner on my eye I saw somebody walk out the open kitchen door. I rotated in my seat to see who was there. I barely saw the guy turn the corner towards the back of the house towards the forest. What the F? David yells. Did you see that motherfucker? I did, dude. Who the F is that? David runs out to his truck where he has a Mossberg 590A. It's buried deep in our knack boxes and we had a bunch of shit to unload to get to it. We just throw shit out of the truck till we get the box open. We decide to search the rest of the house first, scattergun in hand. We go upstairs. We look into the 2 bedrooms, under beds and everything. Nothing. No sign of squatters, animals, nothing. We both affirm we saw a little man with no shirt walk out of the kitchen door to our left from the main porch. We then go towards the back forest. The house and the pad they built it on has a thick gravel base right up to the forest. The forest floor is a thick mat of leaves, needles and duff and hard to track in. We looked all around and found no tracks. With the sun going down and all of our shit exposed, we decided going further into the forest was a bad idea. We both go back inside and close all of the windows, unpack our tools, set up our gear in the lower 2 bedrooms. We regroup in the kitchen and start guessing who that was. Was it a squatter that was living elsewhere on the land and heard us opening up the plywood? Thief? Animal? Either way, we're 2 badass carpenters with guns and not afraid to throw down with some little fucktard. We both go to bed. The next day we start setting up out tools and saws under tarps. We had the shotgun on a sawhorse nearby. Unloaded table saws and miter saws, setting up sawhorses, getting all the blades adjusted and going through the lumber he has on site. We brought cement to pour a post and pier foundation for his addition. We unloaded that and decided to go fish in a river about 300 yards downhill from us. He caught 2 trout right off that bat and I caught one about 20 minutes in. It slowed down after that and we hiked further upstream. That's where we heard rustling across the stream from us. It could have been any number of animals, so we stood sharp. We fished there for about 2 more hours and Dave started gutting the fish we had. We both head up to the house to wash up and fry some fish. After the last few bites of fish go down, Dave stands up at the table. He says he left his Benchmade down there where he was gutting the trout. He grabs a flashlight and heads down there. He said he looked for the rock with the fish guts on them. Said his knife was there, but the fish guts were gone. He half jogged back to hide being scared. Later that night, right after we both go to our bedrooms and shut off the lights, in the total silence I hear footsteps on the second story. I think maybe an animal or squirrel snuck up there. Try to ignore it. It gets more frequent, with the steps going away from me towards the staircase. Dave calls out loudly, "Is that you up there?" "No," I answer, now to my bedroom door. We both open our doors at the same time and step into the main room. We bumped off of each other in the dark and both looked at the upper staircase. I saw what looked like a small boy, but his face was almost featureless and his eyes seemed pitch black in the low light. "Dave, who the F are you?" The figure slowly steps to the railing like he was going to answer us. Instead, he let out an incredibly loud, ear-ripping screech, like what you imagine a T-Rex would sound. It was so loud I covered my ears and stumbled to the floor in the dark. It was so loud it disoriented me. From the ground I look up at the second floor just in time to see it run back into the bedroom. Dave ran past me with his Mossberg in hand. Dave ran to the top of the stairs and turned the hall light on. He then ran straight into the bedroom and out of my sight. Boom, boom, boom. At this point I am beyond scared and almost physically shutting down, like heat stroke or hypothermia. I knew that those gunshots meant that Dave may have just off somebody. Dave reappears at the top of the staircase. He jumped out of the window and ran into the forest. He's like a deformed midget. His back was all effed up and he was on his hands and knees. What? Did you hit him? If his legs are effed up, how did he run away? I don't know, but he jumped out and ran into the fir trees. We both went out the back door and turned on the exterior lights. There was no blood on the gravel. The smell of burnt powder was still in the wind. Was he up there all day? Dave, he must have been. He probably snuck up there while we were working. So why would he go up there? Anything of value? Dave, fing nothing. Old blankets and pillows. Dave, do you have your game cam? Dave, yes. It's in the truck. He goes out to his truck, while I watch from the front door. Again the enormous sound shatters the night. I imagined that the sonic crowd control weapons you hear about would feel like this. I instinctually covered my ears and let go a little pee into my boxers. Dave had dropped his gun and keys out of shock. He jumped into the Tacoma and locked the door. Keys and shotgun on the ground outside of his truck. I close the front door and stare at Dave through the window. He can see behind the house and I can't. His mouth is agape. Figure F this. Run out towards truck. Grab gun, grab keys and beat on window for Dave to open up. He turns to me as white as a ghost and opens the door. Frankly, I'm too afraid to look up towards the back of the house and just rush back to the door with Dave in my arms. I slam the front door and start locking all doors and windows. Dave is pretty much in shock. What did you see? What did you see? Dave swallows deeply and says it was a stretched out dead guy that roared at us. He then rolls over and barfs on his floor. I am really starting to panic and experience tunnel vision. I never knew what that meant until that moment. I give Dave a rag and we sit on the couches. Who the F was it, Dave? A dead guy. Dave, it looked dead and ashy, but it made that noise, and then made a scary face when it saw me. Its face moved into an evil shape. Let's leave, dude. Dave, I can't leave all my tools here. Let's drive into town and get a motel then. Dave, okay. We grabbed out phones and wallets and the Mossberg. Dave insisted on setting up the game cam before we left. He wanted it on the front door, but I said let's put it out back on a tree to see if this thing comes back. We put up the cam on a tree directly behind his house under full gun coverage. We then jump into the Tacoma and peel away from the house. We drove back into town, but everything is booked, so we sleep in the truck. In the morning after breakfast, we drive back to his place. We pack up all of our tools as quickly as we can. We screw the plywood back up. Then with the engine already running, I go retrieve the game cam. I didn't get to download them until today when I got back home. I'm pretty sure what we saw was that little man in the center and a little left of the tree.
Creepy cryptid encounters thread, doesn't have to be in a woods, but my story is. I'm going to apologize ahead of time. This is a fairly long story. Live in Wyoming, won't give out any more location info. Take over Dad's old cabin, refurnish it and go in a woods regularly. My whole family used to go camping together all the time, but we stopped as we got older/busy. Not me, always would go out to clear my head or just for some fun. Been saving up a lot of vacation time/money to have a few extra days off. Ask around, all my friends and GF are busy. Disappointed, but fuck it, we can do another one some other time. Back up my stuff and bring my German Shepherd Baxter. It was around fall, so it was really beautiful out. Baxter's happy, I'm happy, life is good. Get to my cabin. Haven't been for a few weeks, so I have to restock everything, but it's actually in pretty good shape. It should be. I spent a small fortune fixing it up. Spend the rest of the day setting up. By dark I'm cooking dinner and watching TV. The X-Files, the Flute Man episode. Want to get the Halloween/fall feel before going to bed. The next day Baxter and I are out walking the trails. Recently I had begun to walk over them and explore on my own. Dad always warned me not to stray too far, but that was when I was like 12, I'm a big boy now. We walk on, and nothing is out of the ordinary. Birds chirping, sun shining. Walk for a bit, and Baxter starts getting anxious, which is weird. He's usually fine in the woods. Another 5 minutes and I find this old stone building I've never seen before. Like really old, could be early 1900s era. Some of it's still standing, but I can't figure out what it was. Either an old stone house or some type of mill. It was all overgrown and the back was collapsed. I decide the absolute smartest thing to do would be to check it out. Inside smells like really strong cat piss. Also has some leaves and shit inside. Obvious signs of life are obvious. I'm smart enough to know not to fuck around in someone's living room. Me and Baxter get the hell up out of there. Unsling my M1 Garand. You can never be too safe. I keep telling myself I'm just spooking myself. Every little crunch or snap off in the woods has me on high alert. Get back to the main trail, when I hear a big as fuck snap, like someone snapping a limb off a tree. Only something very large could do that. I crouch and ready the rifle. Baxter get down with me. We sit for a few minutes, figure we can wait it out. Completely expecting a bear to come charging, but nothing. We get up and walk on. About 50 or so yards before the cabin I hear it again. Don't crouch, but pull the ultimate dumb blonde in a horror movie. Is anybody out there? I'm armed, so don't be fucking around. In my defense, I didn't want to shoot some kids or a drunk hillbilly, but yeah, that was some Scooby-Doo tier shit I know. Nothing. Double time it back to the cabin. Baxter is inside, sleeping, but I'm on the porch eating and watching. Nothing happens for the night, and for the next day. Laugh at myself, more than likely was just a bear. Go shooting/hiking/fishing and enjoy myself. Come back from walking Baxter and see a blood smear on the side of my cabin. Somebody tossed a Godman squirrel at my house. Looked like it had been manhandled before breaking its spine off of my shutters. Assume there's some axe murderer stalking me. Stop going out on hikes and never leave my cabin. Don't want to run either. This place is mine and I'm not leaving early. Next day it rains. Stay inside and watch TV or read books. Realize I'm an idiot as I only brought scary horror movies/books and murder mysteries to creep myself out. Walk by the windows. Always feel like I'm being watched, but that's probably just nerves. Have a gun in every room. Next day the rain clears. I get outside, because I forgot some floating lawn chairs, but whatever, they'll dry. All broken, every one of them. They were only like 15 to 20 years away from my house. For future reference, this is when the shit starts hitting the fan. I'm definitely being stalked. Eve been hunting enough before to know that. And whatever it is gave its last fuck a while ago and I was late for the show. Which is bad. But, I've got my cabin, plus my Jeep, plus a surplus of firearms. Thank you, based Wyoming. Which is good. If I had known how crazy it was going to get, I honestly wouldn't have stayed. We've had bears and shit before, And usually if you stand your ground and shoot at them they leave you alone. Sitting inside, reading Stephen King's IT, because fuck it at this point, when I hear another thud, this one just to the right of my front door. I don't wanna open the door, I don't wanna open the door. Open the curtains, see a bloody possum still alive, somewhat, twitching. Nope. Go upstairs to my granddad's war chest and pull out Samuel Goliath, his M14 he smuggled back. Load that sucker up, my .44 Ruger on my hip. I already said every room was armed, but that was just like a 9mm per room. Pack up everything else and back in my back. I was still thinking it was some maniac, and I didn't want to have guns everywhere if he got inside. Have all my guns/supplies in bags in the living room in case I need to bug out. Next morning possum is still there, now dead, toss it back into the woods, and yell something to the likes. Why don't you come out now in the daylight you fucking pansy? Of course nothing. Since I'm feeling brave I walked the tree line. Whatever was out here broke some more of my shit, lampposts that haven't worked in years, another chair, my fire pit. Fear is slowly being replaced with rage. Get Baxter, decide to test my balls in the water. Walk a little while into the trees. I'm a dumbass I know. I'm officially the fat guy in the slasher movie that hears a scream and says, I'll go check it out by myself in the dark. We walk for a bit, the further we go the lower Baxter gets and the more he whines. Don't need Cesar Millan to tell me he's scared of being in someone's territory. In the distance make out a familiar shape. The stone building from before. We've gone too far this time Scoob old buddy old pal. See a tall gray chimney in the back that I didn't notice before. Shit that chimney just moved. That's no chimney, and it's not Yogi Bear. Can't make out what it is, but it's pretty tall and slender and gray. Raise M14, yell, hey. It sways slightly, then does this awkward for leap and dash to the side into the bushes. Get posseed by Tom Cruise from Born on the 4th of July, fire off rounds like a madman. Think I hit it, defiantly heard a groan screech. I know I'm ripping off that Goatman story where he says it sounds like a cat talking, but that's the best way I can describe it. Don't know if I hit it, it could have been a battle cry for all I know. Fast walk back to the cabin, don't want to run especially if I'm being hunted. Make it home in one pace. Pack everything. I'm leaving tomorrow, would tonight but I'm not driving around in the dark. Not even the Almo is worth this shit. At the very least I'm coming back with friends. Have everything. Repacking to keep myself busy when I hear Baxter growl. Not deep angry growl, like when the mailman comes to your house. Deep back of his throat growl. Take out my .44, and walk slowly to the kitchen. Nothing, no monster, but Baxter is low and snarling to the window over the sink. There's condensation on it, but in one spot like something was breathing on it. And just to make sure my therapy lessons are worthwhile, a handprint on the glass. Stare at it for a few seconds, almost start laughing at how ridiculous this is. The print was too long to be human. Take a pen and put in at the point where your finger meets your hand and see how long it is. Like that long. Rifle over my should, revolver on my hip. I walk from room to room double/triple hexing to make sure I have everything. Have seen the place this empty since I inherited it. I'm really just keeping busy. If I sit for too long I'll go stir crazy, and I had since given up on ever sleeping again. Had Baxter on a leash to keep him close, but soon took it off. Poor guy wouldn't leave my side. And I hear a thud, again. Then another and another. Check the front, dead raccoon, disemboweled. Check the back, rock, he ran out of animals. Check the front, deer leg, he found another animal. Then I remembered we had these searchlights I had forgot about that you could turn on from the den. We used to play volleyball well into the night when we were little, so Dad put them in. I juggled with the idea. I didn't know if it would scare him off or piss him off. Plus I didn't really want to get a good look at whatever it was. That's when I heard another thump, but this was different. It was going in a horizontal pattern along the outside of the walls. It was smacking the sides of my house. My legs were shaking and I'm surprised, proud, I didn't piss myself. Granddad used to tell me stories of Vietnam, how you know the enemies is there, but you grip your rifle to the point your knuckles hurt and you wait, but how the waiting is the worst part of all. F it, I turn on the floodlights, and walk to each window. And that's when I finally saw this big ugly bastard. so I'm going from room to room, and I'm not seeing anything. I'm getting more and more relieved, thinking I scared it off. I went to the window right under where the lights were and I saw it. Well, actually I saw the dead deer first next to the tree line, all bloody and torn up to all hell, but I then see this thing. Now, I've read through a lot of creepypastas and /x/threads, watched a lot of those hunting Bigfoot/Goatman shows, and they all have a lot of similarities. 7 to 8 foot tall, red eyes, smelled blood in the air, face like a gorilla and build like a brick shithouse, and I can get why people who study them think of them as some missing link to evolution, because yeah, they do look like some long-lost gorilla relative, but whatever in the hell this thing was did not. It was tall, not really tall, but I'd say around 6 feet 3 inches, and slender, long arms, those long fingers that will molest my dreams for years to come, but its face wasn't like a ape, it was more like a baboon, long and droopy. When I googled pic related, it gave me chills to see it again. It wasn't colorful, but like a black reddish color that matched his fur, which was surprisingly sleek. Its eyes were yellow, probably the only relatable thing to the other cryptids, and the light surpsed it, like when you turn on a light and wake someone up. It then glanced at me and we had a Clint Eastwood stare down before it snarled back, its lips showing the yellow baboon-like fangs. It screeched like a bat and did that same side-to-side leap back into the woods. I closed the curtain, checked the lock and curled up with my rifle until morning. When it came I made one trip with all my things and drove like a madman back to town. And that pretty much it. My friends and I went back a month later. Some of the shutters were broken off and there were some scratched, but aside from that it was fine. Last one. Thanks for sticking around if you did. I've been camping since then, but only with large group, no tents and not that deep into the woods. I told my friends and family everything. They all more or less believed me. I'm not the only one with a weird hunting story, though I'm sure mine is worthy of some sort of prize. I told my GF's dad, who's an avid hunter, and he just shrugged and matter-of-factly said,
"Yeah, shit happens if you go out deep enough."
And then in the most deadpan serious tone,
"Those woods aren't ours, not all of them at least."
I've been looking into cryptozoology and into those Goatman threads, and I have yet to read about anything like what I saw. I don't know if I found some inbred Bigfoot or found some kind of new thing that nobody knows about. I've been meaning to ask around to a lot of the local Native Americans. They of all people would probably have a legend of it. It still bothers me how we spent so much time out there as children and never saw anything quite like that, like it could have been watching us the whole time. I asked my dad and he's just said the same thing as my GF's dad. I still have yet to sell the cabin, probably never will, but whatever, for all that's it's worth, it can be that thing's home now.
Youngin'. Camping with big group of extended family and friends, maybe 50 people in all. Like for real camping, in the mountains, none of that RV shit. While looking for legal firewood, Lowell, California, some of the guys found a neat abandoned mine with a real creepy vibe. Decide we're gonna go check it out after dark. On the road in, ancient rusted machinery, and some kind of 1930s era car all rusted to shit with no wheels and no interior. And about 8 million bullet holes, some of them fairly fresh. The mine itself is a huge iron door in the side of the mountain with a pair of steel tracks coming out from under it that abruptly end. The latch on the door has a huge, shiny and new padlock. The door is riddled with bullet holes, some of them fresh. Some of them are coming out from the inside, also fresh. Few of the kids climb up the hill alongside the door. There's a partial collapse leaving a big crack into the interior of the mine. I shine my flashlight down in there. Fucking weird. There's a huge wooden table sitting in the middle of the cart rails, with 2 wooden chairs. My flashlight goes out. All the flashlights that were brought up there go out. Are you fucking serious? This is some bad fiction bullshit. Climb back down. Flashlights come back on. The legend of the door is born. Go back to camp. Adults get drunk as usual. Ghost stories. Speculation on the door. Bedtime. Next day. Decide to go back to the door in daylight. We all troop out there. Someone notices the big shiny lock on the door is a different type. Decide to climb back up again. Some other kids want to see the table and chairs. Brought flashlights to shine inside. Can't see shit. Flashlights go out. Are you fucking serious? Still can't see shit. Climb back down. Flashlights work again. Most of the adults completely blow it off as the kids trying to make shit spooky on purpose. Hang around for a bit. Dick around with the ancient car. Suddenly a noise. Less heard than felt. An incredibly deep but not very loud whump. I'm right next to the door. I very clearly saw it flex outward a bit, and the lock bounce up and clink back. I'm not the only one. Someone says the mine is probably actively collapsing and that was a cave-in deep inside. It's why they put that door on it with the lock. Makes sense. Everyone staring at the door. So everyone sees as it flexes again. Slowly. Shank of the lock gets pulled tight against the clasp. Kids get yelled at to get away. The entrance is probably about to collapse. Nobody believes it's about to collapse. But we're not sticking around to see what's about to happen. Pile into cars and leave. Super spooked. No speculation about the door that night. Just singing and random bullshit. Next day. Not quite so spooked. Mine collapsing does logically account for everything. And we know it's already partially caved in right behind the entrance. Lots of talk about the demonic doorway to hell. All tongue-in-cheek. Decide we're gonna go back and see if it completely collapsed. After dark again. Get back to the door. It has a third different, new, big and shiny lock. There are new bullet holes in the door. Some of the new ones are coming out from the inside. I'm climbing up to see if it's caved in anymore. Get yelled at it's dangerous but fuck you dad, I do what I want. Couple of cousins are going up with me and their parents are oblivious. Looks the same. No new cave in. Shine flashlight down inside. Table and chairs. Chairs are in different positions. Creepy. Flashlights go out. Is this real life? What the fuck? One cousin says the other cousin's name. All squeaky and breathless. Points into the crack. Squint. Red glowing dots. In pairs. Dozens of them. Bobbing up and down. Getting closer. Some are already closer than the jbul and chairs were. Nope. 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 Nope the fuck out of there. Begging parents to leave. Most adults are dismissive or sarcastic. Stupid kids making shit up to be special. Huge wham thud. Against the door. From the inside. Silence. Everybody gets in the cars and leaves with very little said. Back at camp. No singing. No stories. Plenty of drinking. At least 15 people stay up until dawn. Nobody talked about it. They just did it. It's the last day. One group decides they're going back there to see what it looks like early in the morning. They meet a park ranger coming down the road from the door. He immediately gives them the standard shit about what is and is not okay to use for firewood. Also warns them about the dangerous mining equipment on this road. They ask about the door. And he immediately goes on a rant about assholes breaking into the old mine to do God knows what. And shooting up everything in sight. Turns out he's had to put a new lock on the door every morning for the past couple weeks, since he first happened to come down that road and notice it missing. Warns them again not to mess with the mining equipment. It's old and dangerous as hell. They check out the door. Looks the same. New. Different lock. End of trip, but it's a yearly tradition. Same place every year. Next year. The door is a bona fide legend. Lots of exaggerated stories, jokes, fabricated background for the people that happened to not be there last year. Definitely going back out there. After dark, of course. I got 1,000,000 candle power flashlights so I can get a good look through that crack, assuming it works. First night, we all load up and head out there. There's the old mining equipment. There's the shot up old car. But there's no door. Where it should have been is just unmarked hillside. Not like it was buried. There's solid rock and trees and shit. Lots of confusion. Another trip in daylight searching the area. No door. Eventually tracked down a ranger. Mine? What mine? Oh, you mean all that old equipment? That's sluice gear for hydraulic mining. They take a super high pressure hose and blast the mountainside away, sluicing the mud for gold dust. No conventional mine shafts that I've ever heard of. Definitely not on that road at least. By the way, you know you can't cut standing trees for firewood and blah blah blah, manzanita blah blah blah, $10 million fine. So, what the fuck was it? Out camping, hunting in remote Canada. Historic native reserve land full of old camps and spiritual locations. Secluded, many miles wide gated area that very few have access to. Extremely remote. Middle of nowhere in the mountains in between no-name gas station towns. I've been trusted with a key by an elder, caretaker. I'm not a native, long story how I got access. Anyway, I'm camping with my girlfriend and her friend. We're way the fuck out there. Nobody else for till the 100 kilometers or more. Access gate locked behind us. 3 of us sleeping in the back of my pickup beside river. Around 4 a.m. we all wake up to a nearby noise. Sounds like talking. I shush the 2 girls and contemplate going into truck and getting shotgun. Listen more intently. There are 2 male voices very close by. They are arguing loudly, over the noise of the rapid river water. Yelling at each other in a language I couldn't recognize. Sounds like intense, rage-fueled fighting. We all hear it. Situation is tense. Suddenly silence. Just river noise now. Girls are fucking terrified. Go into truck. Grab the gun. Stayed up scared for a couple hours until sun rose. Look around for evidence of another vehicle, people, anything. Can't find it. Leave immediately. Access road gate still locked. Later on I tell the story to the aforementioned caretaker. Tells me I should stay away from that particular river camp. Why? Men are buried there. I thought he was just fucking with me at first, but I later returned to that area, and in the nearby woods I was able to find numerous wooden plaques nailed to trees. They were old and rotten, but a few were recent enough to still have legible writing in faded white paint on them. There were names and dates written on those plaques. I haven't gone back since. No idea what we actually heard that night. Could have been drunk vagabonds fighting for all I know. But that seems unlikely due to how remote it is. Very few people have keys to access this land. And hiking to where I was would take a couple days from the nearest highway. But the area has some interesting history to it if anyone cares to speculate. The gated reserve land is situated between 2 mountains in a long valley. Prior to colonization, this area was an important spirit quest destination for local native bands. An extremely quartz and gold-rich river runs down the middle of the valley, and they would go there to collect power stones. There weren't any villages in the valley, but they did have a few hunting camps and spiritual sites peppered along the river. Young men from the nearest villages would fast for days and then hike out into the wilderness alone, as a sort of initiation into manhood. Their goal was to explore the wild and commune with nature, and to return with power stones, quartz, from the river as proof. With no roads or real trails carved out, it would take them around a week of navigating and hiking to reach the river. They were expected to hunt, forage, and fish along the way. It's my understanding that a great number of young men died out there. After colonization, the natives were pushed out of this area. A gold mine was built at the far end of the valley, as well as a main access road to get there. The mine was extremely lucrative for the 10 or so years that it was active, but inexplicably shut down in 1907 and was never reopened. The area was inactive for a period of time after that. After World War II, a logging company got a lease for the land and built new roads. Some very minor logging was done, but it would appear that this was halted by local natives returning and protesting about the destruction of their historic location. The area was designated as reserve land and gated in the 60s. Public has not had access since. Today, several local native bands still go there to retrieve quartz crystals from the river. They do salmon call dances and chants on the shore, as well as these weird baptism events for their youth that I don't fully understand. I've been witness to both, but never taken part. I've also been informed that many of their people, to this day, are still buried at certain important locations. As mentioned previously, so far I have found 3 burial sites in the valley. I'll try and take some pictures next time I'm out there and maybe make a thread about it. The fighting I heard occurred very close to one of the most recent burials. I'm fortunate enough to have access to this place as an outsider. The natives allow me to hunt, camp, and fish there, so long as I respect it and do what I can to care for the land. I spend a ton of time there, visiting probably 2 to 3 times a month. It's an amazing area, silent, and untouched. Real wilderness that few places on earth provide. There is only one road to get in, providing very rough 4x4 access. Anything else must be traveled on foot, usually with overnight gear. I continue to explore this place and experience it. I've scoured a tiny portion of it. In my last 5 or so years of hiking, I've found dream catchers hanging from trees in the middle of thick forest, seemingly placed at random, away from any trails. I've found unmarked river caves filled with rock statues and totems. I've heard noises that, in a lifetime of hunting, I still don't recognize. I've seen lights dancing in the treetops. On more than one occasion, I've never felt unwelcome, though, except for that one time.
On the trip in question, I decided to hike the old Malala Indian Trail that followed the ridge tops from Saddle Blanket Mountain to Elk Ridge, one of the Native Americans' favorite summer camps and trading centers. It was a beautiful August day. 2 days into the hike, I expected to be gone about 2 weeks, when literally out of the blue the most terrifying thing that ever happened to me in my life occurred. It would change my perspective of reality forever. I was walking along the trail enjoying the strong breeze and bright sunshine when, in the middle of a step, everything around me started to turn gray and blurry. The only way I can describe it was as if suddenly I was looking through someone else's prescription sunglasses. I finished the step and started another. Every inch I moved forward, the darkness increased and the gray blurring turned into a jumble of shapes that made no sense. I then seemed to pass a barrier and everything started to return back into focus. When my foot reached the ground on the second step, everything around me had changed. Day had turned into night and there was no wind. All the Douglas fir and pine trees had been replaced with thick jungle-like growth. The cool thin mountain air was replaced with humid thick air. There were no stars in the sky, but there was a diffused light that let me see everything clearly. However, I couldn't tell what the light source was. As often happens when the human body receives a massive dose of adrenaline, the entire incident appeared like it was in slow motion, and even though I was only there for a second or two, I had time to observe my surroundings. The silence was broken by continuous high-pitched keening sound, and I was nearly overwhelmed with a sense of fear and danger. My momentum caused me to take one more step before stopping in my tracks. It was at this point I heard a whispered,
"Gotcha,"
over my right shoulder. I couldn't tell if I heard it with my ears or inside my head. The word wasn't directed at me, but something said the word quietly to itself. I was so terrified I actually felt my heart stop for a moment. That whispered word is what saved me. I opened my mouth and gasped in a huge gush of thick air and recoiled backward in the same footsteps I had entered wherever I was. As I threw myself backward, I looked over my right shoulder. A dark-colored hairy right hand and arm was reaching for my throat over my shoulder. The hand had pale ivory spade-shaped fingernails. The nails looked clean and almost had a manicured look to them. The thumb was placed lower, towards the wrist, on the hand than a human's is. Both hand and arm were thin and powerful looking, and both were covered with thick, coarse black hair. I got a good look at it because the thumbnail grazed my neck. It did not break the skin. As I moved backwards, As I continued backwards, the hand clutched where my neck had been a split second before and it seemed to fade off into the distance as I returned through the portal. I took 2 more steps backwards and everything reversed itself from what had just happened. The world around me became lighter, the fir and pines gradually came back into view, and by the 3rd step I was back on Saddle Blanket Mountain. I continued to move backwards in terror, and as I did, I observed that where I had just come from was a shimmering oval patch of air about the size of a large door. The woods behind it looked like it was underwater. By the 5th backward step the shimmering area seemed to just evaporate and everything was back to normal. By then my lungs had nearly burst from the volume of air I had inhaled during the huge gasp I had just taken. My body felt like it was on fire from the adrenaline surge. I spun around and ran back down the trail as fast as my legs could carry me, and didn't stop until I reached my truck. I was nearly 2 days getting to that place and about 3 hours getting back. On my way home I was absolutely horrified at the thought of what would happen if I were to drive my truck into something like that. It had been a trap, pure and simple. Whatever it was that tried to kill me somehow kept the portal hidden from me on the way in, and I didn't actually see it until I was back out again. I had terrible nightmares for years, and still haven't come to grips with what happened. My fingers are trembling and the hair is standing up on the nape of my neck as I write this. Severely shaken. I've read everything I could get my hands on about people who have mysteriously disappeared throughout history, and discovered several instances where people have vanished in plain sight of others. The quantum physics people have a theory about parallel universes. They just might be right. Since I originally wrote this, report number 9202 from Sutter County, California was submitted to the BFRO. The person who submitted the report drew a picture of a creature he saw in a tree. The right hand in the picture is exactly the same as the one I saw. Note the thumb placement, and the forearm of the left arm is exactly like the forearm of the creature that attacked me.
Any way you could post the pic from that thread? Very cool story though. Really lines up with my own theories.
There was no picture. The thread was over 100 pages long, but it was an older forum style that didn't have support for pics. Here's the thread, damn good read. Here's the pic the passage refers to. It's hosted on a different website, not on that actual thread.
I have a really dumb tendency to have sleep paralysis a few years ago during high school. Be me. 17. 2 a.m. on a school night and I'm trying to sleep. After a while I wanted to switch the TV channel cause fuck those Bible channels to knock me out like a baby. Can't move. Can't process the situation. Probably dreaming that I'm awake. Look to my right. See some femboy looking guy. Staring right at me and smiling. Aw fuck no, home invader. Try to scream, can't scream.
Having problems?
Aw shit nigga, he talks. Look away cuz that works right?
I'm still here.
Aw fuck man. See a glow. It's my lamp. It's one of those touch lamps with 3 modes from dim, mid, bright. Lays a hand on my chest and rubs.
In 2016, you're going to get in a car accident on the way to work. Slow down to 30.
What? Femboy guardian angel fades into the shadows. Managed to snap the fuck out and write down what happened. Blackout. Wake up in the morning. Lamp is still on. Fast forward to current year of 2016. Last month on my way to work. See a car swerving around. Slow down to 30 on a 45. Get a rear end from hell. Slide into the dirt's DMs. Get a taste of airbag for the first time. 010. Driver, a soccer mom, comes over to see if I'm alright. Mentions how if I had kept my speed I would have suffered worse. Spent hours just filling out insurance paperwork. Lady gets ticket and acknowledges her mistake. K. Call a friend to pick me up. Go home. Worst headache ever. Browse computer and do some house cleaning. Few hours go by and looking through old text documents. Find a RTX file titled Sleep Paralysis Shit Show. Read through it and flip the fuck out. So guys, how do you explain to your friends that a femboy angel told the future and told you how to prevent your death 4 years ago without sounding like a nutcase?
It was a month ago. Got really bored, so decided to make a Ouija board. Mainly got random letters and then a few answers. Eventually I run out of thing to ask, and while trying to figure out what to ask next that wouldn't be offensive, the coin that I was using for a planchet moved to goodbye. After this I thanked everyone that was there and closed the session. After this I felt incredibly drained of energy, and about an hour later I went to bed. As soon as I got into bed, a fucking orb of light materializes about an arm's length away from my head and quickly moves towards my head and makes a sharp left turn into my head. About 5 seconds later I feel my hair start to be played with. Quite understandably I am freaked out and order that whatever is in me leave, and that it is not allowed to be here anymore as the session has been closed. The next day I am still quite drained. This lasted for about 3 days. Good thing that I was on holiday, and felt like there was something in my cheek cavity. I could tell that it was about the size of my fist. Over the next few days the feeling in my chest stayed. By his point I was no longer afraid but quite annoyed. This stupid ghost cunt thinks that it can stay in me while eating my energy. Fuck that. I looked online about this, but everything seemed to be written by faggots, so I took this into my own hands. Utilizing a meditative stance for temporarily removing emotion from my body, I ordered that any and all foreign entities leave my body. My emotion was drained, but the feeling was still there, so I then tried one thing that popped into my mind. I said a word that I dare not type out lest it remove any power my mind gives it, and instantly I felt the presence half diminish in size. I kept saying this word and eventually it went away.
Not exactly a paranormal, but it scared the shit out of me. Be me, 3 months ago. After exhausting day. Finally gonna get some sleep. Can't fall asleep. My left hand gets randomly itchy every few minutes or so. Close my eyes. Hear a loud voice say,
"He's waking up, give him more sedatives for Christ's sakes."
Open my eyes. Realize I am not in my bedroom but in some way larger room with white walls. No windows and only one door. Around 4 guys in lab coats are there with me. Hear the voice again.
"Fuck, he's awake, bring the fucking sedatives right now and put him asleep."
Try raise my hand but I am tied up. Can't move at all. Before I can do anything, one of the guys injects something in my left hand. The itching comes back. Everything starts fading. Blink. I am back in my bedroom. Look at the clock. I was asleep for 5 minutes. Realize how itchy my left hand is. I've had one more occasion when I had really similar dream a month ago and I couldn't sleep properly ever since.
Lake Okeechobee, Florida. 7th largest body of fresh water in the United States. Fishermen used to and still end up pulling up large amounts of human remains. Thought to be a burial ground used by the Seminoles and other Native Americans. Hurricane of 1928. 2,500 dead after 8-foot storm surge from the lake wiped out nearby communities. All buried in a mass grave. Lots of stories of hauntings nearby. 3 years ago, a few friends and I rent a boat to go fishing on the lake. At night with calm waters. Strolling the deck looking at the stars. Feel like I'm being watched. See movement out of the corner of my eye over the water. Oh boy. Hope it's not a gator. See a human skull peeking out above the water. Lock eye/eye sockets on each other. Immense set of dread sets in. Scream at my buddies to wake up while running to draw the anchor and get the fuck out of there. Hear some splashing and almost have a heart attack while hoisting the anchor. Done. Rush to the helm. Full power to engines. Friends still asleep. Get out of area and coast around slowly while keeping an eye out so not to waste too much fuel. Morning. Friends wake up. Anon, why are we 30 miles from where we anchored? I heard this is better fishing ground. I never told them since I don't think they'd believe me. I have never been so scared in my life. The strangest thing is that I had to fight this weird feeling of jumping into the water. I used to work in the gas industry as a geologist. From 2007 to 2009, I was on a contrast with a Russian company called Northgaz, back when industrial relations with the UK were still fairly cordial. There was lots of potential gas sites in this Siberian region far up north, and I used to go around potential sites with company borehole engineers, usually in groups of 2 to 3. Anyway, I was at one site in northern Siberia with a German engineer in late October of 2008. Took ages to get to and completely devoid of human habitation, but really beautiful taiga, endless forests on the drive up there. Anyway, the site we went to survey was fairly typical of what you expect in the industry at these sorts of locations: thin topsoil giving way to permeable siltstone. Excellent locations for surveying. Now to the story. We came to a location where satellite imagery was suggesting that permafrost was retreating. It still fucking snows and ices over, of course, but the key point is that it's not entirely frozen over. You can install stuff during the summer months, get gas production up. It was a pretty boring landscape though. Very thin topsoil giving way rapidly to permeable siltstone. Lots of these natural holes all over the place too. Permafrost plugs that had melted and left 20 to 30 meters deep holes dotted all over the place.
You drove a van through taiga?
Yeah. I'm not a car nut. But it was some modified Jeep that the engineer guy would just not shut the fuck up about all the way from the Obelisk. We decided to stay a few weeks and do some test surveys. First week was completely fine. Got some good locations. Things progressing smoothly. By the end of that week though, things were getting a little weird. Every time I would go out with the spectrometer after that first week, I'd occasionally hear some noises from the holes. I was never near them, because while you get a lot of gas coming off these things, they're not terribly good for industrial drilling. It was faint, just on the border of hearing. I never knew how to describe those noises until a few years later when someone took me out to a jazz bar and some guy was playing a violin-like instrument that made this drone noise. Like a thumb. Disconcerting. Makes your hair stand up. My colleague would notice this too. Disconcerting. As in this job. You're not really working together, but apart. So two of us were hearing stuff out there. We were both rational people, at the time for me. At least, so we put it down to cave noises. Laugh. Forget it. About 10 days into this survey, it started happening at night. Again. Faint. But really ominous. That drone noise. We used to sleep in the back of the van we had brought. But even through those doors we heard it. Again. Stop being stupid. It's cave noises. Laugh. Have a few beers. Go to sleep. It got worse from there. The day after, I found some slime stuff around one of the permafrost boreholes. Yeah. You get lichens and mosses around these things. Not an issue. But this was like petroleum jelly. That really viscous stuff. I touched it and immediately regretted it. It felt a lot like pork belly fat. It was warm too, which was really disturbing, considering it was -5 Celsius. For you Amerifags, during the day out there, bring round the German engineer to take a look. He looks troubled. For the rest of the day I was constantly on edge too. I kept looking back at the borehole too, just to check. I kept saying to myself, things got worse at night. That drone noise got a lot worse. But it felt, and I know that's a shit way of putting it, like it wasn't from below, but above, on the surface. My German engineer tried to laugh it off, but I could tell he was seriously disturbed by it. Just that low fume. Eventually we get to sleep. God knows how many hours later though. We wake up together because there is definitely something attempting to open the door handle to the passenger seat of the van. Click click click. And now that drone is right fucking outside. And it sounds a lot like gurgling. At this point we both freak the fuck out and scream like a pair of little girls. It stops. We don't sleep of the rest of the night. And it doesn't come back. Next day, as soon as we make it 9 a.m., we cautiously open the doors. The entire back door is covered in this pork fat shit. The place reeks of something rotten too. Passenger door just smeared in that stuff. But the thing that made us immediately go fuck it, we're leaving was the passenger window, which was also smeared in this gunk. Had an outline on it, like something had pressed its skull into the fat stuff and left an outline. It was unmistakable, some elongated human skull, with no eye orbitals. Jelly stuff was all over the area around us too. And a fucking course lead all the way to that borehole. We got out of there very fast after that. But as we were packing, that drone shit started again from that hole. And it was loud. It was guttural by this point. Whatever the shit was making it was down there and close too. German guy went pretty nuts after that. Just hopped in. Immediately started going. Equipment that was still out for methane measurements just left. Didn't stop driving for the next 14 hours. I pretty much ditched my job soon after. I had no desire to be left like that again in the middle of places like that. German guy. Never heard from again. He never talked about it to me anyway. Jelly stuff was all over the area around us too. And a fucking course lead all the way to that borehole. We got out of there very fast after that. But as we were packing, that drone shit started again from that hole. And it was loud. It was guttural by this point. Whatever the shit was making it was down there and close too. German guy went pretty nuts after that. Just hopped in. Immediately started going. Equipment that was still out for methane measurements just left. Didn't stop driving for the next 14 hours. I pretty much ditched my job soon after. I had no desire to be left like that again in the middle of places like that. German guy. Never heard from again. He never talked about it to me anyway.
Nice story. Thanks for posting.
Thanks. I suppose. I guess distance from that event makes it sound pretty prosaic. Spooky noises, oh woo. Slime. Oh. During that night though, I was convinced I was going to die. You know how you can just know when someone or something like an animal is nice, curious, or is just out to fuck you up. I knew instinctively that whatever wanted and didn't want to crack open a beer and ask us about geology, if you get my drift. Anyway, I spent a long time after I had calmed down about it, which took a few months, in fact, to think of a rational reason for this. Every time though, I kept butting up against the inexplainable. Sure, drone could be cave noises, but the warm slime stuff, the guttural noise. Around 2012 I got a lot into reading about frozen mammoths and the worry about viruses from the taiga that they were expecting because of climate change. And at that point I went full/x/ and said fuck it. Frozen monster. Years ago I was a student using the GI Bill. I was older. Got a very nice work study as a security guard with the university. Most of the guards were older guys trying to get into the campus police force. Was told I would get an odd assignment because of my military background, the botany/biology department greenhouses complex. May. Okay. Was told to read the post instructions carefully and obey them. The complex was outside radio range, before cell phones, and only one phone in the complex would work at night. The gates to the complex were opened by remote. If the gates were open, I was to leave and call the police from a truck stop miles away. If I saw anyone on the grounds as I drove, and I was to leave and call the police from the truck stop. All doors were to be shut and locked. I was to drive the car up to a side door where I could see the alarm panel. If and only if the panel confirmed all doors were shut and locked could I go in. Otherwise, leave and call the police. If the panel was all green, I was to park the patrol car so it blocked the side entrance. It was recessed. Lock the other car doors. Get out. Unlock the side door. Lock and close the car door I had left. Enter and reset the alarm. If I saw anyone at any time, I was to leave immediately and get to the car and call the cops from the truck stop. I thought the instructions were weird, but whatever. The rest of the instructions that I was to call the office every even hour from the one phone. Pretty common. Since they did all sorts of experiments, if a greenhouse had a sign on it, I was to not enter it. I was to not leave the building except to flee or at the end of my shift. No one except the police or guards I personally knew were from the group could be let in. I cover this place on a 10-hour shift from 10 p.m. until 8 a.m. Friday to Sunday nights. The place is big and sprawling with dozens of greenhouses connected by doors or almost tunnels in a sort of maze. Only the roofs are clear glass, the sides are this odd translucent plastic stuff you can almost see through. Also has a research office/lab building that is fucking freaky as hell. All sorts of machines humming and clicking, and all the east-west corridors have mirrors at the end, so as I walk around I keep catching movement out of the corner of my eye. Luckily I just have to check the labs at the very beginning and end to make sure the rooms are locked and lock them if they are not. Rest of the time I am just supposed to wander around the greenhouses and make sure there are no fires or leaks. In the middle of the greenhouses is a big geodesic dome-heated greenhouse. It is amazing. It has trees, grass, flowers, a little waterfall and pond water feature. There are a few birds that got inside there, a couple frogs, and even crickets. By the third week I am in the habit of eating my lunch sitting by the little pond. I remember very clearly the third weekend it started snowing hard, and I sat in the dome eating a chicken salad sandwich watching the snow as I listened to crickets. I had no idea why the instructions were so grim/extreme. The next weekend, though, something happened. I finished my shift, got my stuff together, and set the alarm so I had 2 minutes to leave. I left, shut the locked door, unlocked the car, got in, etc., just like the instructions, and started to leave. As I backed up I saw tracks in the snow. It was still pretty dark and the lights from the exterior weren't the best, but it looked like footprints in the snow. Like someone had walked around the outside of the car trying to get past it to the door. I looked around but didn't see anyone. The tracks looked like they came from the edge of the fence, straight to the car, back and forth 10 or 12 times, then off to circle the greenhouses. The light was bad, but the footprints looked like they were of bare feet. I got the hell out of there. By the time I got to the truck stop, though, I had calmed down and figured I hadn't actually seen anyone, and with the gate closed, etc., it might have just been my supervisor checking to see if I was doing my job right. I didn't want the hassle of the cops. But when I got to the office I told my supervisor and the manager what I had seen and explained why I didn't call. They were real still, asked if I was okay, and told me that if it happened again I was to call the cops. Couple days later my supervisor calls me on a day off and asks me to grab a beer with him. Workplace bonding. Sure. Meet him that evening. Have a few beers. He is obviously here for serious business. I'm worried I am being downsized or something. Finally he starts to tell me the story about botany, what we called the location. About 12 years before the uni stopped letting people work in the building after dark. Insurance reasons, they said. The rumor was people kept seeing and hearing odd things at night. After a huge leak the uni put security in the building full-time about 8 years before. Then 6 years before a guard vanished. Now, guys who work in security quit by not showing up all the time. And sometimes they quit by just leaving work. But they don't leave behind the car that got them there and their stuff in the building, usually. The new guard talked about hearing noises outside, and tapping on windows, and footprints in the snow. Then he quit because he wouldn't go back. Then 2 years later another guard vanished, left behind the patrol car, his keys, and a wife. The uni didn't want to spend the money for 2 guards and it was so far away that the supervisors couldn't visit all the time, so they came up with strict rules. The new guards would last a month or 2, then the tapping and noises and stuff would scare them off. Then 2 years before I started a guard died. He was found outside one of the emergency exits, seemingly beaten to death. They figure he was new, heard the noises, and went to check it out. Since then they had rotated guys through a few weeks at a time, But everyone who knew the story thought botany was a punishment assignment. But for 2 years no one had seen or heard odd things. So when I started, a combat vet, they figured they'd put me out there. Then I saw footprints. He was so serious I didn't have the heart to ask if he was fucking with me, so I called other guys from the office. They all knew the story. All swore it was true. Some talked about seeing shadows through the greenhouse walls, or hearing tapping at the windows of the lab offices as they walked past, or finding their stuff moved that they left behind when they patrolled. So I called the work-study office and took a different position. Fast forward 5 years, I've got my degree. Having lunch when boom, my old supervisor walks in. He's a cop, now, with the city, not the uni. I say hi, we catch up a little. After about 10 minutes apologize for quitting with no notice. He got real still. Said it was okay. They hired a new guy right away and they only patrolled botany for about 2 more months. Then the uni decided to not patrol it anymore. They just installed a bunch of machinery to shut off the water if there was a leak. Said I should have stayed. No, Anon. They installed all that stuff for a reason. We put the new guy out there on botany. The 3rd weekend he didn't come back to the office, so we went out there. The alarms were still on. The car was parked where it was supposed to be. Everything looked like it should. But he wasn't there. All we found was his lunch in the dome, by the pond.